We are going to go out to Texas. We're going to be talking with Jimmy. Him is telling us that we actually know a lot about spiritual experiences. So that's great. Jimmy, you're chatting up with Secular Rarity and Forrest Valkai. And I'm just going to start off by asking just what do you mean by spiritual experiences? I think that's always a great place for us to start.
Well, I know Forrest is very into the neuroscience, and I heard him say earlier with the previous caller that it wasn't his area of expertise, but then he also said that we don't know much about it, that it's a question mark. I thought that was kind of contradictory.
No, sorry, I want to be clear. I say we don't know enough about like very specific things that we are still learning within neuro. We know a ton about neuroscience. There's very specific things that we're still studying in there. And maybe because it isn't my area that I work in, maybe we've actually learned some stuff about those things I haven't heard. The last neuroscience class I seriously took was a couple of years ago. So like maybe we've learned some stuff since then.
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest, that we have learned plenty, that if you haven't looked into the matter, that, you know, the neuroscience of religion has been going on for decades now. And if you haven't looked into it, I really suggest you do so.
I've read up on a little bit on that.
They don't really speak of them in terms of spiritual experience. The term that the neuroscientists prefer in Western academia, I suppose, is mystical experience, a term that was originally laid down by William James. And then if you go to the UK, you know, they'll use a different term. They'll speak about the loss of ego. You know, they won't use the term mystical experience so much, but they'll speak of it in terms of the dissolution of the default mode network, if you've heard that term before.
Can I jump in for a second, Jimmy? Because I wanna make sure we're all on the same page here. So when you're describing it, it sounds like a lot of what you've said thus far when talking about spiritual experiences is information that is based on, you know, scientific experiments where essentially it seems like the spiritual experiences are just, you know, our body doing the normal thing that it does. Is that what you're saying? Are you saying that spiritual experiences are just completely equal to the brain just firing with the neurons and synapses and so forth? Because I don't think that I don't think I would disagree with that concept. I think spiritual experiences are because of the wiring in our brain and the chemicals and stuff. So if that's what you think, then yeah, I think we're on the same page.
Well, I wouldn't even say it's necessarily what I think. I think it's a conclusion that they're coming to in neuroscience that, it is a biologically normal experience. It's been happening for millennia, and now they can induce it in volunteers. And, you know, this is something that's been going on for thousands of years.
Sure.
And, you know, different religions have approached it in various ways. And it's had different names throughout history. You know, the Hindus might have called it samadhi. The Christians may have called it the direct revelation of the Holy Spirit. But each of the world's major religions does have a term for this experience, yes.
Yeah, no, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, is like I am familiar with what you're talking about in terms of that specific research. Like, I've heard a bunch of this, and like, what we call spiritual experiences are just profound experiences that are very normal and very explainable. And people who are ignorant of what's going on in their minds or what the situation they're in or whatever like that, like all the people for thousands of years before the concept of neuroscience was a thing, those people attributed it to something supernatural, and they were erroneous in that attribution, but we can still make these things happen. So like there's a reason why there's a science, for lack of a better word, to worship services. They bring the lights to a certain level and they put the music to a certain level and they have everybody do the same kind of motion at the same time, and you feel connected with the people around you, and then you have this euphoric kind of overload of endorphins. It's the exact same thing that happens at a rock concert. That's why live music was so popular when it first became like these big crazy lights and fire and all these things, these rock shows. That's what they're there for, is to give you that euphoria and that community and that sense of belonging and all those things that we attribute to a spiritual experience. Mushrooms do the same thing sometimes. So like Yeah, I understand, and I'm familiar with what you're talking about, but why does that? You're calling in as a theist, I see here.
Yeah.
Does that tell us anything about the existence of a god? Because to me, that's ammo as an atheist to say, yeah, every magical religious experience that you or anybody else can point to, I can explain with science, and it's not magic, and it's just a thing that can happen, and it has an evolutionary basis, and it has a reason to fit into cultural anthropology. It's not special.
Right.
And so, like, where are you coming from with this call? Like, what are you trying to get at?
That was exactly where I wanted to
All
go
right.
for.
Well,
You read my mind.
okay. I have kind of an issue with the term supernatural. I once asked Matt Dillahunty to define supernatural, and he couldn't do it. He said, I've never had an example of the supernatural, so I have no way to define it. And I feel like a lot of atheists define it in such a way to mean something like magic or something that defies the laws of physics. And I don't think that's necessarily what people are talking about when they talk about spiritual or mystical experiences. And it's not necessarily what you get at a rock concert either, or if you take, a recreational dose of mushrooms and go to a rock concert. Even if you look into the neuroscientific studies, they don't use recreational doses to induce these experiences. They use, what Terence McKenna called a heroic dose. And that's definitely something you don't want to take at a rock concert.
The thing is,
about the complete.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I kind of feel like I understand where you're getting at here. So, so stop me if I make a mistake here. But like, I get what Matt's saying here. Knowing Matt, that sounds like some stuff that he would say, because he would want to break that concept down as much as he could and really have a well thought out explanation for it and a good definition of it. And that's hard to do with such a colloquial term. Because when we talk about supernatural experiences as atheists or as scientists or whatever like that, we are talking about it in this way: a phenomenon that happened where a person, it felt a very unique way. They had a unique experience, it's a phenomenological thing, maybe a little bit of a neurochemical thing that's brought on by extreme and unique stimuli that normally they wouldn't be exposed to. And so it feels very personal and very moving and very profound to them. Like, that's what we would describe. But that's not what our friends and neighbors, the common folks around us, mean when we talk about supernatural. What they mean is something outside of the natural realm, supernatural. They mean something that is magical, something that has no logical explanation, something that you can't apply science to, something that only comes from a spiritual, otherworldly realm and touches some magical, spiritual, holy part of their internal being that's separate from physical reality. They have this very woo-woo esoteric crystal magic, whatever, the Mercury was in this position and Jupiter sharded and then I saw a bird, and like, that's what they're talking about. And so we can't come up with an explanation or a definition that fits that for everybody, because everybody has a different way of saying it. Everybody means something a little bit different. So like, that's why Matt or me as well wouldn't use such a word.
Right.
I don't. Yeah, but I think that description is entirely irrelevant to what neuroscience is currently trying to say about.
I agree, but that's what most theists are going to be talking about. It's like when people try to use quantum mechanics and stuff to talk about God, and they're like, oh well, there's this special connection to the universe and entanglements and all that stuff. Wow, magical, whatever. That's not what average people are talking about when they talk about God. They're talking about an actual invisible person in the sky who's watching you masturbate. And so like, when we talk about supernatural experiences or spiritual experiences, you and I can talk about neuroscience. That's fine. And we're going to come to the exact same agreement, which is that it isn't magic. But everybody else who's using those words to justify their faith, they're not using them the same way. And they're not going to be talking about the same thing we're talking about. So that I return to my original question: where are you going with this?
Yeah.
At the same time, I don't think the average person has had such a phenomenon occur. And
hang on, Jimmy, give me a second here, because I really would like to. I'd like to make progress, and I feel like we can with this call. But I feel like currently for about 10 minutes, we've kind of just been circling a little bit, and I want to get to what is honestly really important people like myself and Forrest and a lot of the people here watching today, which is there seems to be a connection for you with spiritual experiences and potentially this belief in a deity, supernatural, supranatural, magic, whatever terminology you want to use there is fine. Forrest and I are generally pretty willing to grant words as long as we just all understand how we're using them, right? And I guess what would be most interesting for me, and I think all of our viewers, would be if we could make a connection with those. Just basically what Forrest said a moment ago, like, where are we going with this? So like, let's just say, yes, spiritual experiences, they're a thing, but what it seems to be the case is that it's a lot of cool, flashy, mumbo jumbo, chemically stuff going on in the brain. Why does that lead you to believe in a god, or does it? Is it connected at all for you? Like, are these just totally separate things? Like, where are we going with this thought? That is what I would love to make some progress on, if we can.
Cool. I'm trying to get there, and
Yeah. Okay.
so here's the conclusion I've come to. I think when people say supernatural in relative to these experiences, if you actually look into, let's say, Johns Hopkins research on mystical experience, they have 6 criteria that they go by to define the experience. And, one of them is, of course, this connection with all people and things. Well, the people feel that they're connected to all, like the mystic says, we're all one. And then you have a deeply felt positive mood. People feel not only that they're all one, but that everything is, there's a love for all people and things. And then another one is a transcendence of time and space. This is unanimously described amongst volunteers who meet criteria for this phenomenon. And, when people say this, it deals with the complete dissolution of one's ego. And so your ego is no longer there inside that experience. And so what instead happens, there is this impression that all time, past and future, collapse into the moment. And
Jimmy,
I think
I'm familiar with the criteria. I'm asking,
Jimmy,
what does it mean?
Right.
What's the point?
Right.
Yeah,
Get us, take the next, no, hang on.
Don't describe the whole literature. Yeah. Don't give us a lecture on it. Just tell us what you mean.
We got you muted for just a second, okay? Because truly, Forrest and I love having these conversations. We really want to hash out stuff and understand where other people are coming from, because we like to make sure that our positions are as solid and as based in reality as possible. And so if you've got some connection between these spiritual experiences and your belief in a deity or an afterlife or supernatural whatever, that is what we would like to get to. So we don't need to go through the criteria again for what John Hopkins says is a spiritual experience. We don't need to hear about what people experience. We don't need to hear about how many people have experienced or how cool it is. Honestly, let's get to the actual meat here and tell us why there is anything interesting at all about spiritual experiences, and how in the world does that relate for you to believing in a deity or something. Let's get to this, okay? So I'm gonna bring you back. You're unmuted now, but let's get to the point of this, because I think both Forrest and I, there is some interesting stuff here, but right now it just doesn't feel like we're really getting into it. We're just kind of like skirting the edges. So
we also have over 10 other people waiting.
Right. We also have a bunch of other calls. So.
All right, I'll try to get faster to the point. And I mean, I'm trying to get there. You guys keep on interrupting me, but okay.
You had 15 minutes.
When I said the sense of transcendence, I think that's what people confuse with supernatural. I think these volunteers do have a sense of transcendence, and I think I don't think it's necessarily supernatural. I think we all have a potential to have this phenomenon occur. And it doesn't necessarily mean something supernatural. It's not magical. It's not, something that defies the laws of physics.
Does that transcendence lead you to believe in a god? Like, fine, we'll just accept where you're at.
Well, I've had this experience for myself, That's why I'm
Right.
so passionate about it, and I look into it. And I was an atheist before I had this experience, and it didn't lead me to believe in some kind of anthropomorphic entity. My notion of God and my understanding, interpretation of God completely was altered by this experience. And,
But the experience
I
led
saw
you
this.
to believe in that. Is that what you're saying? Just to be clear, because that's what it sounds like you're saying, but you
Yes.
didn't say those words exactly.
No.
Cool. So then here's my
Yes.
response to that. Awesome. I'm glad we're on the same page. You had a spiritual experience. It fits these criteria. We have some good scientific data. Hell, Johns fucking Hopkins is even involved in it, which probably means there's some robust scientific explanation. Here's my question, because I feel like we're at the crux now. Okay, Jimmy? And so my question is, what if I had that exact same experience? I hit all the criteria and I come to a conclusion that is outright, explicitly contradictory to your conclusion. What do we do? Where do we go? I take a heroic dose. I have a transcendent experience. I don't believe the thing you do. What do we do?
Well, okay. I really see the neuroscientists, when they engage these volunteers, the volunteer could say whatever. They could say, there's been volunteers that have said, I'm still an atheist after this. And, but at the same time, it felt like my soul is bathed in God's love. They'll say these kind of contradictory things. I think, a lot of people who do say stuff like that, they haven't really looked into the religious literature and stuff like that. The way
Jimmy, I've muted you again.
Fuck,
and I know. And look, like truly, I think there are very few instances of Forrest and I engaging in conversations where we are just outright assholes. Not saying it doesn't happen, right? But we're always trying to engage sincerely and honestly. We want to hear what you have to say. We want to get to the point. We want to clash a little. We want to be challenging, but respectful. And where we're at right now is and please, Forrest, if I'm the only one feeling this way, please tell me. But it doesn't feel like we're actually getting to anything. I asked you a direct question, Jimmy, and we got no response whatsoever. Okay. So I go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, like, just if I can be more clear, Jimmy, we keep asking, why does this lead you to believe in God? And the best we've gotten from you is, well, I do.
Right.
And like, I have also had, these phenomenal experiences. I have also had what would be classified as a spiritual experience. I have also, both sober and not sober, I have had similar experiences like this. And time and space collapsed, and I felt connected with the universe, and it was magical and wonderful and everything. And I'm still an atheist, and I was an atheist when it happened. And if somebody uses language like I felt bathed in love with my soul or whatever like that, maybe they're just using colloquial terms.
Right.
Maybe that's just how they talk, and it doesn't actually literally mean they both do and don't believe in God at the same time. You haven't given us anything. You just keep saying spiritual experiences happen, but we have a logical explanation for them. And we go, yes, you're correct. And then you say, and I believe in God. And we're like, why? And you're like, because spiritual experiences happen and we have a logical explanation for them. Right. We're like, right, that doesn't connect. So like, I don't know. I'm not the host today. So Elliot, I give it to you. If you want to give him another chance. Like
I'm giving you one more chance, Jimmy. Okay. And we are even going to put up our wonderful explain it to me like I'm 5-timer. Okay. I will bring you back here in just a minute. You will hear a beep when you are unmuted, and you will have a full minute uninterrupted to address exactly what Forrest just said. And if we don't get that, we will just move on, because I got some super chats. I got some other really cool calls we want to get to. So I'm going to unmute you here. We're going to put this up. And we're gonna let you go. But when that timer stops, man, if we are not at the crux of this conversation, we are moving on. All right. So you're probably hearing a beep right now. You are back on, Jimmy. What is thy response? You have a full minute.
All right. Well, Forrest said, I still don't believe in God. I could ask what he means by that term. Maybe he's interpreting it in a specific way when he talks about God. Because the way the neuroscientists laid out is they related to, what's referred to as perennialism. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but that these instances have been happening throughout millennia, that when people meet these criteria, it's virtually the same with what the Buddhist was referring to with nirvana, or with the Sufi mystics talk about with fana. That this is the same exact phenomenon in consciousness. And this is actually what people would refer to when they refer to the divine or God. And so I think it's just a matter of semantics here that we're arguing at this point. I think that's what I'm getting at. And I really doubt that Forrest has had something what Johns Hopkins would call a complete mystical experience.
Okay, so your time is up. I would like to say that I don't really feel like you addressed anything that Forrest said.
You
I'd
just
like
said
to
the
point
same
that
thing
out
again.
Yep. I would also like to say it is, I fully disagree. It is not a matter of semantics. There are individuals out there who 100% believe there is other existence happening around me now. Fully believe that. Maybe they use the word magic. Maybe they use the word spiritual. Maybe they use supernatural. Maybe they use gobbledygook. It doesn't matter, because the thing that they're actually trying to talk about does not have any demonstration. It doesn't. And so, yeah, I was hoping we would get some more right to it. We didn't
You
really
literally
seem
just
to.
said the same thing again.
We didn't really.
So there's
seem
these
to.
things that are called spiritual experiences,
Right.
and they're called, and they happen this way, and people all over the world have them and have had them for a very long time, and we have a naturalistic explanation for them.
I feel like that's
Thank
an
you
answer
so
for the
much.
non-believer, right? Like
I was
that's
gonna say,
points for our side.
Thank you for telling me that for 20 solid minutes. I agree. Next call. Let's go.
Yeah.